Chapter 71. 71, Gao Xian. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 71. Gao Xian Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. From that conversation, it was clear that the two of them had a good relationship. Despite Gao Xian calling herself a big mouth, it was evident that Jing Yimo trusted her a lot. Looking at Jing Yimo in the mirror, Gao Xian couldn't resist teasing him, "Dude, I've never seen you care so much about a meal before. Why is it that when others invite you for a meal, you're unwilling to go no matter how much they insist? It seems you're waiting eagerly for this one." Jing Yimo didn't reply. Xia Xian felt a bit embarrassed, but it was the makeup artist for Gao Xian who couldn't hold back. She forcefully turned Gao Xian's head straight and said, "Miss, could you please keep your head still for a moment? Let me finish your makeup and hair. I won't even complain if you start doing a neck dance." Gao Xian didn't dare to argue back and could only make a face in silent protest. Xia Xian was immediately drawn to this girl, finding her amusing and friendly. Gao Xian was outgoing by nature and couldn't help striking up a conversation with Xia Xian. "Hey, you've been so popular online recently. Why do all the animals like you so much? Do you have any secrets?" Xia Xian found it hard to explain the reason and could only be vague. She said, "Maybe it's because I've had a connection with animals since I was young. I even studied biology in college and researched on small animals." Gao Xian pouted, "That's quite an enviable skill. The script says we'll be interacting with lions in this episode. Lions are so fierce. Won't there be any danger?" Xia Xian explained, "There will be professional lion keepers present today for this segment. There won't be any danger. Also, we won't actually be in direct contact with the lions. We just need to place raw meat in front of their cages, and the keepers will take care of the rest." Jing Yimo was curious and asked, "What's your role?" Xia Xian answered, "Actually, I have very little screen time in this episode. If it weren't for the contract with the show, I probably wouldn't need to appear at all. So, my responsibility is to find the meat with you all and bring it to the lion cages." Jing Yimo glanced at Xia Xian and advised, "Stay safe." Gao Xian chimed in, "Indeed, safety should be a priority. I've noticed that Miss Xia Xian here seems to be at odds with this show. She's been injured in almost every episode." After Gao Xian spoke, her agent, Zhou Ping, handed her a phone, saying, "It's 1-1 calling for you." Gao Xian furrowed her eyebrows and said, "Why would she suddenly call me? If she needs something, doesn't she usually go through Li Jie to contact you? It's strange for her to call me directly." Xia Xian felt puzzled and thought, aren't they both members of the same debut group? Their relationship should be good, so why did they seem unfamiliar with each other? Gao Xian answered the call with an indifferent tone, asking, "What's up?" 1-1 asked, "Are you currently filming the next episode?" Gao Xian impatiently replied, "Yeah, what's the matter?" "I heard that the guest for this episode is Jing Yimo," 1-1 said. Gao Xian was exasperated. "If you have something to say, just say it directly. We're about to start filming." 1-1 deliberately used a cutesy tone, "You're always so impatient." "I don't have anything serious, just wanted to remind you. That Xia Xian is quite a troublemaker. You should keep your distance from her. Don't end up being scolded and trending someday without realizing it." Gao Xian snorted, 1-1, "If you were only being scolded and trending because of your actions, I'd think you lack emotional intelligence at most. But the fact that you're saying all this to me makes me believe you're actually quite foolish. You." 1-1 was furious, her voice becoming sharp. She was about to start yelling, but the call had already been hung up. 1-1 angrily tossed her phone onto the couch and said, "That infuriating Gao Xian. Just because she knows Jing Yimo and has a good entertainment company doesn't mean she can be arrogant. She even dared to hang up on my call. Li Jia listened from the sidelines, regretting his decision to become Wanwan's manager. He was certain that her emotional intelligence truly wasn't suited for being an actress. If she ended up ruining herself someday, that was one thing, but he hoped she wouldn't drag him down with her. Wanwan seemed dissatisfied with her current management company, complaining that she shouldn't have signed the contract back then. She even thought if only she hadn't agreed, they wouldn't have brought her so much trouble. Because the backstage was quiet, everyone could hear Gao Xian's conversation with Wanwan clearly. Xia Xian stood awkwardly to the side, not knowing what to say, just wanting to escape the scene, and said, "Maybe I should go to the set and see if there's anything I can help with. You guys continue with your makeup." Chapter 72. 72, recording. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 72. Recording translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Gao Xian stopped Xia Xian, saying, "It's okay, Xia Xian. You don't have to avoid it. This kind of thing is common among celebrities. Just get used to it. Since you're Jing Mo's friend, I didn't intend to hide from you. Although I won't help you, I won't at least do anything to harm you behind your back." Xia Xian was touched by Gao Xian's honesty. She realized that not everything about the entertainment industry being complicated was true. At least there were people like Gao Xian who were straightforward. Xia Xian thanked Gao Xian, and then the assistant director came to call everyone to start filming the show. Since they were in the Lions area, Xia Xian wasn't a main participant. She didn't need to be by the Lions' side constantly like in the previous 2 episodes. She would only appear during her segments. Xia Xian rested backstage until a crew member came to call her for her appearance. She put on a baseball cap and applied a neutral-colored lipstick to improve her complexion. Then, she took a deep breath and said to herself, "I hope I don't get injured today." The crew members were puzzled, wondering if they had misheard, is this a high-risk job? Her demands for herself were so low, as long as she didn't get injured. Maybe we should stay away from the zoo from now on. When Xia Xian appeared, the game was mostly over, with Gao Xian having won. She was happily posing in front of the camera. Jing Mo stood nearby, but the camera didn't focus on him after a close-up, so Xia Xian ended up standing next to him when she entered. Jing Mo softly reminded Xia Xian, "Be careful. The lions today seem a bit unusual." Xia Xian looked at the pacing lion and asked, "What's wrong?" Jing Mo answered, "It seems this lion is a bit agitated. It hit the cage during filming." Xia Xian observed the lion closely. She and Jing Mo weren't far from the cage, so she could see that the lion's eye sockets were reddened, a clear sign of agitation. It impatiently blew air out of its mouth and whipped its tail against the cage several times, displaying nervous and anxious behavior. Xia Xian couldn't help but recall the lions she encountered during her exploration in Africa. They were just like the situation today, restless, staring at the crowd as if looking at prey. It was a mixture of resistance and the urge to tear apart as if they could devour everyone at any moment. Fear welled up within Xia Xian, and her palms started to sweat nervously. Sensing her tension, Jing Mo inquired, "How are you feeling? If you are not feeling well today, I can talk to the director to stop the shoot and cancel this segment." After some mental preparation, Xia Xian declined Jing Mo's suggestion. Although Xia Xian was afraid, she didn't want to cause any accidents on the show due to her own fear. That would only put her back into the spotlight for the wrong reasons. Additionally, Xia Xian had resolved to use this opportunity to expose the person behind the scenes. She couldn't let him keep causing destruction unchecked. From any angle, Xia Xian wouldn't easily back down. "It's okay, I can do it," Xia Xian said and gave Jing Mo a determined look. Jing Mo nodded slightly, not interfering with Xia Xian's decision anymore, but planning in his mind how to protect her if necessary. As Xia Xian expected, that troublemaker had indeed taken every precaution to ensure that the lion remained under his control. Xia Xian initially thought that the rampaging lion was that person's only trick. However, she didn't expect that he would even damage the cage and tamper with her. From the moment Xia Xian stood by the cage, she felt something was off. The lion became visibly more agitated, repeatedly ramming the cage, and the lock on the lion's cage even showed signs of coming undone. Xia Xian felt that the lion's agitation might be related to her somehow. She wondered, could it be something on my body that was provoking the lion? Was there something that had triggered the lion's restlessness? Xia Xian carefully thought about what she had encountered today. As she had already guessed that someone would make a move, Xia Xian had been extremely cautious, avoiding contact with anything unfamiliar and only staying in familiar areas. She just couldn't figure out why the lion became so agitated. She pondered, is it something on me that caused this? Suddenly, Xia Xian remembered that the cap she was wearing on her head had been handed to her directly from backstage. It was the only thing on her from head to toe that didn't belong to her. Chapter 73. 73, Crisis. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 73. Crisis. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Xia Xian quickly took off her cap and tossed it aside. Indeed, the lion kept staring in the direction of the cap and continued ramming the cage. Xia Xian had already communicated with the director of the show, so when he sensed that something was wrong, he promptly halted the filming. They began to pack up the valuable filming equipment, and the lion's keepers were ready. They would seize the lion promptly if any issue arose. Despite their caution, the situation unfolded in a way that exceeded their expectations. The lion was far more furious than they had anticipated. It broke the lock on the cage and burst out, even before the keepers could react. The lion lunged directly at the cap, tearing it to shreds, then shifted its gaze towards Xia Xian, who had been wearing the cap. Jing Yimo grabbed Xia Xian's arm, pulling her behind him, protecting her. With great solemnity, Jing Yimo observed the lion that was about to pounce, his fear of carnivorous animals causing him to slow his breathing, trying not to provoke the lion. Just as the lion was about to charge, Gao Xian suddenly shouted, "Don't you love eating meat? There's plenty of meat here for you to enjoy." Gao Xian then tossed the fresh raw meat she had won into the air, aiming it at the lion. The meat successfully deterred the lion's attack. The keepers seized the opportunity to use their capture tools and managed to subdue the lion. However, the captured lion struggled wildly, emitting furious roars. Each roar challenged Xia Xian's endurance, making her feel as if she was back on the vast African savanna. Cold sweat formed on her forehead and her lips turned pale. Jing Yimo held onto Xia Xian's wrist tightly, hoping to provide her with some support. Watching the struggling lion, it took Xia Xian a while to calm down. She finally gathered the courage to gently free herself from Jing Mo's grasp and slowly approached the lion. Xia Xian's actions weren't foolish, rather, she had two reasons. First, she couldn't bear to see the lion in distress, and second, she had confidence in her beast language system. Xia Xian's 3 days at home hadn't been wasted. She had meticulously studied the system's passive abilities and was convinced she could control the lion, which was why she dared to approach. Although the lion continued to struggle, its emotions became somewhat stabilized as Xia Xian drew closer. Xia Xian said, "Don't be afraid, I won't hurt you." The lion's eyes showed surprise, but they were more wary and fearful. It said, "Human, you can actually talk to me." Xia Xian thought to herself that the lion truly lived up to its title as the king of beasts. Even when captured, it maintained its proud posture. By this point, Xia Xian was close enough to the lion. She crouched down cautiously in front of it and slowly reached out her hand, attempting to touch the lion's head. Unexpectedly, the lion struggled fiercely, letting out an angry roar towards Xia Xian, which startled her, causing her to sit down on the ground. "Stay away from me, human!" the lion roared at Xia Xian. Although the lion had been raised by humans and should have been more accustomed to them, Xia Xian's scent made it wary. However, at the same time, when Xia Xian approached, the lion strangely felt a sense of calmness that it couldn't control. It couldn't help but want to get closer to her and felt a fondness for her. The lion was conflicted, and there was a hint of anthropomorphized struggle in its eyes. Seeing Xia Xian fall to the ground, the others wanted to come over and help her, but she stopped them and said, "I'm fine, you don't need to worry." Due to the crowd around them, Xia Xian could only slowly crouch down in front of the lion. She whispered, "Why do you have such hostility towards me?" The lion disdainfully turned its head away and said, "Hypocritical human, you stole my cub and now you want to deceive me here, a cub." Xia Xian suddenly understood. The cat carried the scent of the lion's cub, which was why the lion became agitated upon seeing her. Its cub was missing, and it believed Xia Xian had taken its cub. Xia Xian said, "I know you don't believe me now, but rest assured, I will help you find your cub. Don't struggle right now, the capture tools might hurt you. Go back to your cage obediently. I promise to help you find your cub." For a lion, especially one that had just lost its cub, trusting a human was a tall order. However, the way this woman spoke made it involuntarily believe her. Moreover, it felt that this woman could speak the beast language, so it figured things probably wouldn't go too far astray. Thus, it obediently stopped struggling, but it still warned Xia Xian, "Human, if you can't find my cub, I will eat you for sure." Chapter 74 74, Capturing the Mastermind. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 74. Capturing the Mastermind. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Seeing the lion calm down under Xia Xian's soothing touch, she smiled with relief and gently stroked its head. She said, "You can trust me. Maybe others have deceived you, but I absolutely won't." The onlookers were amazed to see that the lion had quieted down under Xia Xian's reassurance. Xia Xian instructed the lion's keeper, "It has calmed down. It just gave birth recently. When you take it back, be careful and don't hurt it. It won't harm anyone anymore." The lion's keeper was a fellow colleague who had started at the same time as Xia Xian. He was tall and burly, looking at Xia Xian in astonishment. He said, "I never thought someone as petite as you would be able to tame such a fierce lion. Although it's already the most docile lion in the zoo, getting it to calm down is quite a challenge. You're really impressive." Xia Xian modestly smiled. The variety show still needed to continue filming, and there were still many audience members present. Although Jing Mo was concerned about Xia Xian, he didn't approach her to avoid arousing suspicion. He watched from a distance, relieved to see her unharmed. After handling these matters, Xia Xian had to attend to something even more important, catching the culprit. Xia Xian went to the zoo director's office, where Lu Yuan was watching the lion enclosure's every move through surveillance cameras. When Xia Xian arrived, he couldn't help but praise her. That scene just now was truly thrilling. "Xia Xian, you're quite courageous. You dared to approach a lion in such an agitated state. Weren't you afraid it might actually harm you?" Xia Xian thought to herself that she was indeed afraid. If she didn't have the beast language system protecting her, she wouldn't have dared to get close. Xia Xian explained, "Mr. Lu, I've already learned the reason behind the lion's sudden rampage. It smelled its cub scent on me, so it must have thought I stole its cub, which is why it was so furious." BDNVL Lu Yuan was astonished. He asked, "Has a lion given birth recently in the lion enclosure?" "I had no idea about that. I recall the lion keepers told me about a lion that had a difficult birth, and the cub died inside its womb. Could it be that lion?" It seemed that someone had tampered with things right under Lu Yuan's nose. The lion had given birth about half a month ago, even before the filming of the first episode had begun. That person couldn't have known in advance about the show's recording schedule. Thus, their intention in stealing the lion cub couldn't have been to frame Xia Xian. Instead, they likely aimed to steal the lion cub and sell it. Smuggling animals was a criminal offense. Xia Xian said cautiously, "Mr. Liu, it seems we need to thoroughly investigate where the lion cub went. However, the most urgent matter now is to apprehend the mastermind behind this." Lu Yuan nodded and then dialed Tang Hai's phone number. Tang Hai's voice sounded normal on the other end. There was nothing suspicious, and his tone was simple and honest. No one would suspect that he was the one orchestrating these malicious actions. He asked, "Mr. Liu, is there something you need?" Lu Yuan asked, "Where are you right now?" Tang Hai didn't detect anything amiss and truthfully replied, "I'm cleaning the tiger enclosure." Tang Hai had always been responsible for taking care of these ferocious animals and cleaning their enclosures. He had been doing an excellent job for many years without any mistakes, so Lu Yuan had complete trust in him. Lu Yuan continued, "Put aside what you're doing for now and come to the office. I have something to discuss with you." "Sure," said Tang Hai. Around 20 minutes after hanging up the phone, Tang Hai arrived at the office. Seeing Xia Xian, Tang Hai appeared slightly surprised. He said, "Xia Xian, you've already come to work at the zoo with your leg healed. You're really dedicated. Mr. Liu, you should consider giving her a raise." Tang Hai's tone was casual, as though his previous strong insistence on taking Xia Xian to the hospital or visiting her at home had never happened. He behaved as though there were two completely different sides to him. Looking at Tang Hai, Xia Xian asked, "How did you know my leg was better?" Tang Hai was puzzled. He said, "I saw you walking without any problems, so I guessed your leg had healed." "Is there a problem?" Seeing Tang Hai's innocent expression, Xia Xian genuinely began to doubt whether she had misjudged him. He really didn't seem like someone capable of committing those acts. With a stern expression, Xia Xian asked, "Tang Hai, are you still going to pretend?" Tang Hai didn't understand her meaning and asked, "Xia Xian, what are you trying to say? I really don't understand." Chapter 75. 75, Contradiction. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 75. Contradiction. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Xia Xian said, "Tang Hai, I really didn't expect you to be this kind of person. You tampered with the rockery to make the stones fall, injuring people. It was also you who damaged the panda's wooden structure, causing harm to Bao. And today, you contaminated my hat with the scent of a lion cub, which drove the lion crazy. You even damaged the cage lock, allowing it to escape. It's all you." Tang Hai wore an incredulous expression and said, "Xia Xian, I've treated you decently before. How can you accuse me like this?" Xia Xian couldn't comprehend and asked, "Why haven't you admitted it yet?" Tang Hai's frustration turned into anger and he asked, "What have I done? What am I supposed to admit? I've treated you well, so why are you framing me like this?" Xia Xian, furious but amused, said, "I knew you wouldn't admit it so easily. Without evidence, you'll never confess. Mr. Liu, show him the evidence." Lu Yuan turned the computer screen towards Tang Hai and pressed the play button. The surveillance footage displayed Tang Hai sneakily entering the backstage dressing room. He indeed swapped the hat. Then, lowering the brim of the hat, he left the dressing room. Although his face wasn't fully visible, the body shape in the footage indicated that it was Tang Hai. In another clip at the lion enclosure, Tang Hai wore the hat but didn't wear a mask, making his face very clear. He glanced around to make sure no one was watching and then took out a saw from his pocket. He sawed through the lock on the cage, then used glue to mend the lock, ensuring it wouldn't be noticed. Afterward, he even smirked maliciously in the direction of the camera, sending shivers down the viewers' spines. Tang Hai finished watching and was also in disbelief. He took 2 steps back, astonishment written all over his face, and exclaimed, Xia Xian, where did you get this video? You're wrongly accusing me. Mr. Liu, this really isn't me. Xia Xian furrowed her brows and said, Tang Hai, we've reached this point, and you still won't confess. Could surveillance footage be fake? You're clever, every time you acted, you would disable the surveillance in the control room. To catch you this time, we borrowed a miniature camera from the production team and installed it near the lion enclosure to capture your actions. I never thought that even now, you would still try to argue your way out. Tang Hai felt a fit of intense anger and shouted, if I had really done this, I wouldn't argue. But I didn't do this. Seeing Tang Hai's serious expression, both Lu Yuan and Xia Xian started to waver. They wondered if they had made a mistake. Tang Hai's gaze was pure and innocent, devoid of the cunning expression seen in the video. However, Tang Hai's face in the surveillance footage was extremely clear. It was difficult to dismiss the evidence even if everyone wanted to admit they were wrong. Xia Xian couldn't help but speculate that Tang Hai might have a twin. Tang Hai glared at Lu Yuan and said angrily, Mr. Liu, I've worked at this zoo for 5 years, putting in effort even when there was no reward. If you think I've done something wrong, just tell me straightforwardly. Don't try to frame me behind my back. I absolutely couldn't have done something like this. Because Tang Hai's expression was so earnestly righteous, Lu Yuan also began to question whether they had apprehended the wrong person. With a grave expression, Lu Yuan said, Indeed, you've been working at the zoo for 5 years. I know your character very well. At first, when Xia Xian accused you, I didn't believe it. It was only when the video was exposed that I had to believe it. I want to believe you, but when faced with irrefutable evidence, you can't explain it away. Unless you can prove that this evidence is fake. Tang Hai said furiously, I can't prove it. I'm just a keeper, not a video editing expert. How would I know how to manipulate this stuff? The situation remained at a stalemate, and nobody knew how to proceed. Seeing that everyone remained silent, Tang Hai grew even angrier. He removed the ID badge hanging from his neck and slammed it onto Lu Yuan's desk. He said, Since you doubt me so much, then I have no reason to continue working here. I'm resigning right now. Xia Xian was at a loss for words. Her lips opened and closed, unsure whether to stop him or continue arguing with him. She could only watch as Tang Hai put down his ID badge and turned to walk out of the office, removing his staff uniform as he went. Chapter 76. 76, Eerie. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 76. Eerie Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. As he reached the doorway, Tang Hai suddenly halted and emitted a series of strange laughter, sounding as eerie as if it were coming from an animal. Humans found it difficult to produce such sounds, and both Lu Yuan and Xia Xian were creeped out. Tang Hai's figure against the backlight seemed as if he had traversed from hell, still laughing. The laughter lasted for about 2 minutes. He bent over while laughing, then abruptly straightened, even his voice turned somewhat sinister. He said, You've discovered, so what? Why bring it up? Both individuals were left dumbfounded. Lu Yuan slammed the table in anger and asked, Tang Hai, what are you saying? Tang Hai laughed again and said, Hee, don't you understand the literal meaning? Even if you found out that I did these things, what can you do about it? Those animals deserve to die. A monkey with psychological issues, a disabled dot-legged panda, and a lioness who lost her cub, what's the point of them being alive? Why don't they just die? Tang Hai's words filled Xia Xian with fear and dread. Trembling, she asked, Are you admitting that you did these things now? Yes, I admit it. What's there to not admit? Unlike that coward who, when falsely accused, can only leave without arguing back, a true waste. Tang Hai said. Xia Xian was taken aback for a moment. She thought, this way of speaking, it sounded so much like split personality. Tang Hai smirked coldly and said, "You're no saint either. What gives you the right to discuss me?" Xia Xian countered, "What do you mean by that? Clearly, you have a boyfriend, yet not telling anyone, putting on an innocent face to the world. Then you flirt with other men everywhere. You're nothing more than a b*tch. Tang Hai said. Xia Xian had never heard such offensive insults before. Angrily, she retorted, "Whether I have a partner or admirers is none of your concern. What gives you the right to comment on my affairs?" Tang Hai turned to look at them. His gaze was no longer the honest and genuine one from before. Instead, it was fierce and full of resentment. He said, "I can't stand the fact that you have a boyfriend and still try to seduce me, using that innocent appearance of a pure white rabbit to seduce people every day. In reality, you're just a promiscuous fox. I kindly went to the hospital to see you, and you dared to reject me in public. Also, why didn't you tell me when you were discharged? I wasted a trip to your house, waiting downstairs for you. You dared to say that I was disturbing you. I waited for you at your door for 3 days. You, this wretched woman, didn't leave the house for 3 days. If it weren't for you not coming out, you would have died long ago." After hearing the last sentence, Xia Xian took a step back in fright. The expression and tone of Tang Hai's words made her spine tingle. The stark contrast in Tang Hai's attitude before and after left her in a state of shock. Rong Qi often heard footsteps outside her door, and it wasn't her imagination. Tang Hai had been monitoring her all along. Xia Xian found it hard to imagine what would have happened if she had actually gone out that day. The fear of narrowly escaping death caused her undergarments to become instantly damp with cold sweat. Tang Hai continued, "That's right, I stole that lion cub too. I smeared its scent on your hat because you deserve to die. You should have died. To think you didn't was a pity. I wonder what tricks you have up your sleeve to make those animals so docile around you. It seems you have a way with not just men but animals too." Xia Xian couldn't bear to listen any longer, her eyes reddened with anger. She shouted, "Shut up. Don't project your filthy thoughts onto others. Heh, pretending to be righteous. Don't use your fake innocence to deceive me. I've long seen through your true self. Do you think I'm as gullible as the others? Dream on." Tang Hai exclaimed. Xia Xian calmed herself down. She couldn't let Tang Hai's words get into her mind. She shielded herself from his words. Looking at Tang Hai, Xia Xian retorted sharply, "Because your heart is dark, you see everyone is unworthy of respect, just like you. Ultimately, you don't respect yourself. You've never acknowledged yourself. You're just a coward, too afraid to admit your failures, so you put the blame on others. You're a laughable coward. Shut up." Tang Hai shouted as he clenched his fists, his gaze as if he wanted to tear Xia Xian apart alive. Chapter 77. 77, A Chaotic Mess. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 77. A Chaotic Mess. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Possibly because Tang Hai had been a keeper for carnivores like tigers and lions, his current gaze was as fierce as a lion's, as though he might open his bloodthirsty jaws in the next moment and sink his fangs into Xia Xian's neck. Instinctively, Xia Xian covered her neck and took a step back. Lu Yuan also stood up, slamming the table. "You've worked here for 5 years, and I never imagined you were this kind of person. You even shifted your blame onto a young girl. Since you want to resign, then leave quickly. You're not welcome here." Tang Hai emitted that chilling laughter again, saying, "I don't want to leave now. I've decided to stay and watch how you all scramble like clowns to clean up any mess." Lu Yuan, shocked, asked, "What are you up to?" Tang Hai replied, what am I up to? You'll find out soon enough. You might as well take a look at the surveillance footage and see how your zoo has turned into chaos. Lu Yuan, increasingly infuriated, immediately brought up the surveillance footage. He saw the zoo in complete disarray. All the locks on the cages were like illusions, they automatically opened before the animals could even collide with them. Tang Hai had destroyed every single cage in the zoo. Now, animals were running everywhere. The lions were under control, but there were still tigers, hippos, and more coming out of the cages, and wandering around the zoo. Visitors were panicking, running around, shouting in alarm. Their food lay scattered on the ground. The entire zoo looked like a mess, chaotic just like the streets in a post-apocalyptic movie. The more Lu Yuan watched, the angrier he became. Pointing at Tang Hai, he scolded, "You lunatic, do you know what you've done? What if the animals harm the visitors?" Tang Hai said, "Don't act all righteous. Are you really worried about people getting hurt? You're just concerned that, after these things happen, the zoo won't be able to operate anymore." Lu Yuan looked at the young man before him in disbelief and asked, "How can you think this way about me?" When Lu Yuan established the zoo, Tang Hai was his first employee. Back then, Tang Hai seemed honest and simple, exuding an aura of reliability. Lu Yuan believed that having someone like Tang Hai, who loved animals, working at the zoo would ensure good care for all the animals and propel the zoo to greatness. Back then, the zoo didn't have many animals, and Tang Hai even accompanied Lu Yuan to other zoos to borrow more animals. It could be said that Tang Hai had been by Lu Yuan's side throughout his journey to success. This was why Lu Yuan had such faith in Tang Hai. As the zoo grew, Lu Yuan didn't micromanage but instead treated Tang Hai well, allowing him to move freely throughout the zoo. Lu Yuan was now infuriated, not just angry. Seeing Tang Hai transformed into this person, he was even angrier at himself. He was angry that he hadn't seen through this person's true nature in 5 years. More than anything, he was angry at himself for being fooled. Lu Yuan was so upset that he almost lost his balance. Xia Xian hurriedly went forward to support him, helping him calm down. She said, "Mr. Lu, please calm down. Don't let your anger affect your health because of someone like him." Ednel.co Tang Hai sneered, "What kind of person am I? I'm just magnifying your desires, merely showing you your dark side. Why can't you accept it? When those thoughts arise in your hearts, why don't you find them disgusting?" Tang Hai suddenly looked at Xia Xian, a smug smile on his face, and he said, "Oh, right, and your stinky dog. Lael." Xia Xian thought. "Didn't you always want to know who pulled its tongue out?" "Well, I'll tell you. I pulled it out because it bit me. A dog that bites people recklessly doesn't deserve to have a tongue. Not only did I pull out its tongue, but I also tortured it. I broke its leg and left it on the street to fend for itself. Since it doesn't have a tongue anymore, there's no point in being alive. It's better off leaving this world, wouldn't you agree?" said Tang Hai. Xia Xian was infuriated. She yelled, "You're insane. You're truly horrifying, to be so ruthless toward animals. And you call yourself a zookeeper." Chapter 78. 78, Heroic Rescue. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 78. Heroic Rescue. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Xia Xian felt that the person before her had completely lost control. She could reasonably guess that Tang Hai must have some mental issues. The drastic shifts in his emotions indicated that there was something wrong with his mental state. Xia Xian didn't want to listen to Tang Hai continue speaking. By now, the security guards should have arrived. She looked at Tang Hai and said, "If you have something to say, go to the police station and talk to the police. Yes, we're just ordinary people. We can't communicate with someone like you, who thinks so highly of themselves. You should reflect on your life in prison and stop disturbing ours." Tang Hai's expression turned cold and asked, "What have you done?" As Tang Hai was about to charge forward, the security guards arrived in time. They grabbed one of Tang Hai's arms each and escorted him to the security office, waiting for the police to take him away. With solid evidence now, Tang Hai had no escape. After dealing with Tang Hai, the next thing needed to do was to quickly secure the escaped animals to the zoo. Xia Xian said, "Mr. Liu, I'll organize the keepers to help catch the animals. Please arrange for the cages to be repaired as soon as possible to prevent them from escaping again." Lu Yuan sat down, heaving a sigh of relief. He said, "Sure, go handle it. I'll take care of the rest." When Xia Xian walked out of the office and reached the animal areas, chaos reigned. Security guards were directing visitors to leave the zoo in an orderly manner, while the remaining staff were chasing after the animals. Hippos, elephants, and giraffes were all wandering around the zoo, minding their own business. Xia Xian could control young animals, but she didn't know if it would work on such large animals. Regardless, she was going to give it a shot. Using her mental powers, Xia Xian first guided the hippos and giraffes back to their enclosures along the designated zoo paths. Then she carefully approached the elephant, making sure not to startle it and end up getting kicked by accident. Curious, the elephant moved its trunk around, looking around, and asked, "Are you Xia Xian?" Xia Xian was surprised that the elephant remembered her. During her visits to various enclosures, she had spent about a week in the elephant area. Xia Xian said, "Yes, it's me. Why did you all come out? Quickly return to your enclosures. Your presence here can scare people." The elephant explained, "It's not that we wanted to escape. Someone lured us out, and after we came out, we couldn't find our way back." Xia Xian reassured, "It's alright, I'll guide you back." The elephant added, "I saw a white tiger escape from its enclosure earlier. However, it passed by me in a flash, so I don't know where it went." A tiger? Xia Xian was shocked. Other animals were manageable, at least they were docile herbivores that wouldn't harm people. But tigers were different, they were carnivores. If a tiger encountered people, it would definitely pose a threat to visitors. Xia Xian asked, "Which direction did you see the tiger go?" Using its trunk, the elephant pointed in a direction. Xia Xian quickly told the elephant, "Your enclosure is straight along the way with balloons." Then, Xia Xian hurriedly went after the tiger. The very thing Xia Xian was concerned about happened. When she found the tiger, it was approaching a person. With elegant strides, the tiger gradually closed in on the terrified person, as if savoring the struggle of its prey before it died. Xia Xian ran closer and only then saw that the person on the ground pushing backward with her feet was Gao Xian. Xia Xian hurried over and stood between Gao Xian and the tiger. "Calm down," Xia Xian said. The words weren't directed at Gao Xian, but at the white tiger before her. Xia Xian's abrupt movement startled the tiger, making it somewhat agitated. It roared but then stopped and actually calmed down. The zoo was filled with screams. Other visitors must have heard the tiger's roar and were scared, crying out in fear. Xia Xian tried to use the beast language system to warn the tiger not to harm anyone. But the tiger innocently responded, "I'm hungry and need to eat. Move out of the way quickly, or I might eat you too." The tiger's roar had attracted more people, including the tiger keeper and Jing Mo, who was searching for Gao Xian. Xia Xian didn't have time to explain. She said to Jing Mo, "Quickly take Gao Xian away." Chapter 79. 79, Capturing the Tiger. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 79. Capturing the Tiger. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Jing Mo approached cautiously, grabbed Gao Xian's arm, and pulled her up from the ground. Then he pushed her toward her manager Zhou Ping and said, "Take her to a safe place." Having done that, Jing Yemo turned around swiftly and joined Xia Xian in facing the tiger. Anxiously, Xia Xian said, "This place is dangerous. You shouldn't stay here." Jing Yemo frowned and said, "You know it's dangerous, yet you still came here. Are you only interested in dangerous places?" Xia Xian pursed her lips and thought this wasn't the time to bicker. The tiger let out an unhappy roar, and Xia Xian refrained from speaking any further, focusing her attention on the tiger. Currently, controlling the tiger was crucial. While her beast language system could control young animals, she wasn't sure if it would work on a tiger. At this point, it was a desperate measure. Xia Xian struggled, attempting to use her ability to control the tiger through her mind. However, it was evident that she had failed. The tiger continued to approach slowly. Jing Yemo grabbed Xia Xian's wrist and instructed, "Listen to me. When I count to 3, run with me." Sweat formed on Xia Xian's forehead. She now realized that controlling animals was truly exhausting. She was concerned that her strength might give out. If she slowed them down, Jing Yemo might be harmed. She said, "Don't let me hold you back. If there's real danger, make sure you escape quickly." Jing Yemo's tone was resolute and said, "I'll never leave you behind." Seeing how determined Jing Yemo was to stay, Xia Xian was torn between hoping to control the tiger and ensuring they both remained unharmed. With a deep breath, Xia Xian closed her eyes, focusing her attention in making a concentrated effort to control the tiger mentally. Although the control was weak, it was effective enough to slow the tiger's approach significantly. Finally, the tiger started struggling but was unable to move forward anymore. Just in time, the tiger keeper arrived with capture tools. They quickly put an iron muzzle on the tiger to prevent it from biting and used the tools to restrain it, successfully capturing the tiger. Others turned to Xia Xian and asked, "Are you okay?" Sweat covered Xia Xian's forehead, her lips turned pale, and she panted. She answered weakly, "I'm fine for now." The tiger keeper couldn't help but admire Xia Xian and praised, "Xia Xian, you're truly brave to endure in front of a tiger for so long." Growing weaker by the moment, Xia Xian lacked the strength to continue the conversation. A faint smile tugged at her pale lips before she collapsed backward. Luckily, Jing Yemo caught her in time. Worriedly, Jing Yemo held Xia Xian and immediately started running towards the exit of the zoo. As they ran, he scolded her with an affectionate tone, "You're always like this, rushing forward in every situation. Aren't you afraid of getting hurt? Don't you know that if you're hurt, the people who care about you will worry about you?" However, Xia Xian couldn't reply. She had already fallen asleep again. Once again, Xia Xian was rushed to the emergency room. The doctor, having seen this situation before, looked at Jing Yemo helplessly and asked, "What happened this time?" Jing Yemo looked at Xia Xian's pale lips and thought for a while before responding, probably just shocked. The doctor seemed exasperated by Jing Mo's answer and asked, "Is this girl in a high-risk profession? She falls ill every few days. As her boyfriend, you should take care of her and advise her to change her job instead of letting her get hurt." Jing Yemo didn't argue. He urged the doctor to start the treatment. The doctor said, "I understand you're worried sick, but you'll have to wait for the treatment. It takes time, and I need to listen to her heartbeat and check for any unusual sounds in her chest first." The doctor slowly took off his stethoscope, listening to Xia Xian's heartbeat and checking for any abnormal sounds in her chest. Then he looked at her pupils and concluded, "It's probably due to excessive fright combined with exhaustion. That's why she fell asleep again." How long will she sleep this time?" Jing Yemo asked. "It's hard to say. It depends on her recovery speed," said the doctor. With a helpless look at Xia Xian, Jing Yemo picked her up and carried her into the ward. Xia Xian slept for a long time this time, a whole day and night. Jing Yemo had spent a whole day and night in her ward. When he saw Xia Xian waking up, his emotions were complex. He said, "Sleeping Beauty, you finally decided to wake up." Still a bit dazed, Xia Xian looked at Jing Mo with vacant eyes. She tried to move, only to find an 4 needle in her hand. She asked blankly, "Is it serious? Why am I hooked up to an 4? Chapter 80. 80, Reunion. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 80. Reunion. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Jing Mo replied casually, "It's not serious. You just slept for a day and a night. You can't skip meals, so they gave you 4 drip." That reassured Xia Xian. She confirmed that forcibly controlling animals was too energy-consuming. However, she needed to think about ways to exercise and strengthen herself with items from the shop. Fainting like that wasn't a good situation to be in. While Xia Xian was pondering that, her stomach suddenly let out a loud rumble. She awkwardly smiled and looked at Jing Mo. She said, "Are you free tonight? Let me treat you to dinner." Jing Mo hadn't expected the dinner to unfold in this way. He replied helplessly, "What do you want to eat?" "Whatever you like. Since I'm treating you, you can decide," Xia Xian said. Jing Mo's expression remained unchanged as he asked, "Are you sure?" Blinking, Xia Xian said, "I want to have beauty jigi, hee. After sleeping for a day, Xia Xian felt she needed a good meal. She ordered the beauty jigi, grilled meat, and double cheese. The sight of the food made her appetite surge. Xia Xian was ravenous by now, so she didn't care about maintaining her image and just dug in. Jing Mo wasn't fond of greasy food to begin with, and as an actor, he had dietary restrictions. He couldn't consume high-calorie foods, so he only had some vegetables and mostly watched Xia Xian eat. Jing Mo had initially suspected that Xia Xian might be someone he knew, but now he was certain. Xia Xian was the person he had been searching for. Finally finishing her meal, Xia Xian looked up and saw Jing Mo staring at her all this time. She blinked in confusion and asked, "Is there something on my face?" Jing Mo chuckled, "No," perplexed, Xia Xian questioned, "Then why are you looking at me like that?" Jing Mo replied, "I find it amusing watching you eat. It's very appetizing." Xia Xian looked at the barely touched chopsticks in front of him and said, "Do you really find it appetizing? You hardly ate anything." Jing Mo didn't answer. After a moment, Xia Xian suddenly asked, "Why do you always treat me so well? It's like ever since we met, you've been really kind to me. Do you like me?" Jing Mo couldn't help but laugh. "This seems more like the real you. You used to be so polite all the time." Xia Xian explained, "That's because we weren't familiar back then, so of course, I had to be polite. Now, after experiencing life and death together twice, aren't we considered friends?" Jing Mo nodded slightly and said, "Yes." Continuing, Xia Xian said, "If I think about it, you've saved me many times. It seems like you always appear at the right moment, like a guardian angel sent by the heavens to protect me." Jing Mo smiled and said, "You flattered me." Wiping her mouth, Xia Xian looked at Jing Mo seriously. She said, "All right, now you can honestly tell me why you've always been so kind to me." Jing Mo gazed at her with indulgence and asked, "Is this the only thing you're curious about?" Xia Xian thought for a moment and said, "There might be other things, but I can't think of them at the moment." "So," Jing Mo asked Xia Xian, "do you remember saving a young man when you were young?" Xia Xian thought hard for a while but couldn't recall. Her little face wrinkled in concern, then she suddenly looked surprised and exclaimed, It's you." She burst into laughter. "You're so different from back then. No wonder I didn't recognize you. But anyone seeing you now would never imagine you were the same person from before." Xia Xian continued talking to herself, not requiring a response from Jing Mo. No wonder the first time we met at the pet store, I felt like your eyes were familiar. We really knew each other a long time ago. Jing Mo pretended to be serious and teased, so, you forgot about me. Xia Xian said, not really. It's just. It's been so long. I didn't expect us to meet again, so I didn't remember. It's not my fault. I've remembered all this time, said Jing Mo. Xia Xian pouted playfully and said, that's why I treated you to dinner today, as an apology. Jing Mo couldn't help but smile at Xia Xian's playful demeanor. He said, you're like a child. I won't hold it against you. Defiantly, Xia Xian retorted, I'm not a child. I've already graduated. I'm an adult.